The night, May 12th, 2019. Millions of viewers, all of whom are using their Estranged Aunts HBO subscription, are tuning in to check out the penultimate episode of Game of Thrones. On this night of nights, everyone's tentative optimism is completely and utterly shattered when Daenerys Targaryen just, fucking kills everybody in what I can only describe as a dragon-augmented temper tantrum. Across the globe, there could be heard a collective groan of anguish from all those people who had, opted for that very classy Khaleesi back tattoo without properly grasping the gravity of such a permanent decision. How could this have happened? Who was in charge? How could a poorly shoehorned in Christ metaphor possibly turn out to be the main antagonist in a show infamous for not just morally ambiguous characters, but also unhappy endings? Who is to blame? And where is their house and or workplace so that I may more easily harass them? According to nearly the entirety of the Game of Thrones fan base, the culprits for the character assassination of Daenerys are none other than showrunners David Benioff and Daniel D.B. Wise. Now, fun fact, no one has ever been able to figure out which one is Daniel and which one is David. This is true. The reason for the decline in their leadership skills? Some suggest that a now defunct multi-film deal with Lucasfilm is to blame. It was possibly a reason for the D&D boys to, just sort of wrap up the last couple seasons a little bit faster. Others have posited that it is the lack of source material that is hurting these later seasons. As we all know, author George R.R. Martin is still tirelessly working hard to finish the final installment of the book series. And a little scoop for you. I actually have the real bona fide Word document that George R.R. Martin has been using to write Winds of Winter on, and I am very proud and excited to show you a sneak peek at all the work that George has been doing. Take a look. Now, I for one actually really enjoyed the way that Game of Thrones ended, Yes, it was a little dumb that Bran won the throne in the end, especially since Bran was such an unimportant character that the show sort of, forgot about him for an entire season. But I came to appreciate his vacuous blank stares, and also the fact that people just seemed to leave him places. Sometimes these places were contemplative spots, like by trees or by ponds. Other times it seems like they just left him in the middle of the street. Did they not think to, wheel him indoors? Or all in all, though I had problems as well with how the series ended, I still came away from it feeling like all the characters managed to stay true to their essence at the end of the day. And that's something that 99.9% of shows can't say. Now, this specific point is where I and people who dislike the show's ending principally diverge. You see, detractors of the show argue that Daenerys' character was somehow warped or tarnished in order to better fit the narrative needs of the show. A character they saw as the principal protagonist was butchered and blasphemed in order to tie up all the loose ends of the countless narrative arcs. Now, if I had watched the entire show with this idea that Daenerys was some sort of heroic altruist who, though tested many times throughout the show, still managed to stay true to her values and rise above the muck of moral ambiguity, I also would be thoroughly disappointed when this episode came out, showing Daenerys, lose her actual mind and commit actual genocide. But I did not view the show through this suppositional lens. Instead, I saw Daenerys as this mentally imbalanced totalitarian way back in season 1, baby. I'm the Nostradamus of Westeros, man. I saw that shit in season 1. I want to pump the brakes here because, unfortunately, my opinion of Daenerys has placed me amongst a subgroup of fans that I don't really want to be associated with. You know the ones. Real life sexists. So I want to preface before I begin, absolutely roasting Daenerys, that her being a woman has nothing to do with why I think that she sucks. In fact, I don't think Daenerys sucks. Much like Stannis in the earlier seasons, I think Daenerys serves as this really good warning about how absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think her fall from grace is a great warning to viewers that a totalitarian monarchy is, as a political concept, is not sustainable and is not something that should be championed. You see, the issue that I have is that apparently, between you and me, apparently no one saw Daenerys' turn to the dark side coming. Okay? And I did. All said and done, I think we can all agree that the end of Game of Thrones could have been better. That being said, I think that all the viewers can be divided into two very specific camps. One, Daenerys always had the capacity to be the bad guy, so the ending makes sense even though it's a little predictable. And number two, Daenerys is bae. And her turning into the bad guy is not just a betrayal of her character development, it's a betrayal of the fam. So to reiterate, this video is not me bashing Daenerys Targaryen, but rather this is me trying to illustrate that those who belong to that second camp of thinking, I don't think they were paying attention the entire time, just the entire time of the show. So I'm going to address and argue against, a few key points that I think that this group of people are working from. One, Daenerys is a good person who does good things. Two, Daenerys is not a manipulative sociopath. And three, Daenerys is a good ruler who does things that a good ruler would do. So by providing rebuttals to these 3 points, I think I can formulate a pretty strong argument that whether or not you thought the ending was good, you have to admit that it was neither a sacrifice of Daenerys' character, nor a diversion from the narrative trajectory of the entire show. Daenerys is a bad hombre, everybody. Determining the morality of Westeros is difficult because I don't know if you knew this, but Westeros is not real, and therefore it operates with a different set of ethics and values. However, there does seem to be this sort of proverbial line drawn in the moral sand within the Game of Thrones universe. Some things that are bad in real life are still bad in Game of Thrones, but there are other things that would be a no-no here, but are perfectly fine within the confines of Game of Thrones. All of these things can be plotted on what I like to call the line of morality. You see, this line is split into kind of two halves. At the top end, we got what I like to call yes please. Everything on this line, even within the Game of Thrones universe, is morally, it's okay. On the other end, we got what I like to call no thanks. These are the no-nos. These are the please stops. And separating these two is a little area I like to call depends on who you ask. And unfortunately, this is where the concept of incest is located. You see, Daenerys is unique because despite being hailed as the hero of the series by most of the viewership, she consistently does things that I, and even the in-universe moral code, considers to be bad. Things including, but not limited to, consulting and using the services of a witch in a botched attempt to resurrect your husband. You see, that's a no thanks. Crucifying all high-ranking members of a city without checking to make sure that some of them were actually pretty cool dudes. That's a no thanks. Friend-zoning Jorah Mormont for 8 seasons, you see, that punches all the way through no thanks and goes straight to yikes. Here's a list of other things Daenerys has done. Incinerating political enemies despite being educated on the imminent and long-term advantages of keeping them alive. Allowing gladiator-esque blood sports to occur simply because it benefits her politically. Locking her 2 dragons in a pitch-dark room because she wants to save face, despite the fact that she claims that these 2 dragons are her literal children. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Jared, oh my gosh, you're so handsomely dressed and you're so cute. And to that I would say, thanks a lot for the kind words. It's taken a long time for me to grow comfortable in my own skin, so to speak. I appreciate the compliment. But you also might be saying to yourself, Jared, Daenerys does nice things. Daenerys does good things for people. And you would be right to a point. You see, Daenerys only does good things for people when it directly benefits her, which is something that I will fully illustrate in point number 2. Point number 2, Daenerys is a sociopath. As someone who has a bachelor's degree in psychology, but is neither a psychologist nor a psychiatrist, I feel perfectly comfortable with labeling Daenerys as a textbook sociopath. You see, Daenerys may have a conscience, but I feel that it is completely and utterly subservient to her ultimate goal of total world domination. If you want to be Daenerys' friend, it's very simple. Swear your undying loyalty to her, and she will love you. Question her authority in any way and in any capacity, and she will either banish or kill you. You see, Daenerys has no friends. She only has allies, and this is actually a very compelling component of her character. I actually think it's cool that Daenerys as a person is incapable of mercy and perhaps even empathy. And I think it's interesting how this incapacity can lead to conflict with not just her enemies, but those who are closest to her. What I didn't realize is that people saw this deviant behavior and were like, oh hell yeah, girl. Hell yeah. F*** it up. You know what they say. If you ain't on the Daenerys train, okay? Choo choo choo, get out of the way. You know how people talk. I think that the common thread that I'm seeing is that people see Daenerys' flaws and they attribute them as strengths. Her stubbornness, her brutal diplomatic style, and her chilling ability to just cut people out of her life entirely. You see, somehow these have become yes pleases when I would argue that they are most definitely no thankses. I mean, look at the chart. Bring the chart back down. I really hope that these toxic aspects of Daenerys' personality have at the very least translated into some sort of political or military success.
Number 3, Daenerys is bad at her job.
What does it take to be a ruler? I would argue that, a measurable interest in ruling people is a very important component. Daenerys does not rule. She conquers. And when she does rule, she rules poorly. Remember when, on the way to Westeros, Daenerys just decided to chill in Slaver's Bay for like 3 seasons? I always saw Slaver's Bay as sort of like a Westeros with training wheels for Daenerys. I never got the sense that Slaver's Bay was anything more than just a sort of proving ground for Daenerys' regal capabilities. Which is not good, because Daenerys' way of conquering these cities was by murdering large percentages of the population. How could we not have foreseen that Daenerys would burn King's Landing to the ground? If only there was a foreshadowing from a previous season, from multiple previous seasons that could have clued us in to this, But that's what's kind of interesting about Daenerys, is that Daenerys can't rule over anyone. She has no interest in it. This is why when she gets to Westeros, all she can do is murder. I actually think that the imagery of Daenerys triumphant amid the ashen ruins of King's Landing is really powerful. I think it represents a completion of her arc, Daenerys got what she wanted. She got the Iron Throne, and all the blood and the fire that was required is justified by that fact. The loss of her allies, the loss of her dragons, the loss of her sanity, it's all okay because those were all just stepping stones on the way to the Iron Throne. To Daenerys, it was never about the kingdom, it was about the throne. And that's why I really do. I think it's a satisfying ending to the show. I think that the melting of the throne at the end of the series is a really powerful metaphor to the pointlessness of all of this. Our characters that we love so much, they put it all on the line to defend the world against this icy apocalypse, and yet the real danger was lurking within themselves the entire time. This inability to be better, this inability to let go, this inability to make compromises. You see that turmoil on her face. She has a choice to make. The kingdom or the throne? And Daenerys is gonna make the choice she's always made. And this brings me to my closing statements. Guys, look, alright? Daenerys said she was going to break the wheel, and she did. Unfortunately, that caused the wagon to careen off of a cliff and everyone inside of it died. I completely agree that the later seasons have issues. I mean, come on. There was an episode in the final season where it seemed that the cinematographer forgot to take the lens cap off of the camera. I get it. But when I see on the internet all these people whining and complaining about Daenerys' character being misrepresented or even ruined, I just don't buy it. I think it's great. I think Daenerys is a character they actually nailed. I think that there was a clear line there, and they connected it, and they made it satisfying at the end. If anything, I feel like Jon Snow is a character whose writing was handled far less well in the later seasons. I don't think that Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister got a good ending. Do you? But Daenerys, I mean, wasn't this the whole point? Wasn't it all leading to this?
You're here, there's nothing I fear, and and I know that my heart will go on.